Hey, Jordan here, and thank you in advance for watching this. What we're about to go into are a series of artist talks as part of a series that we had launched as our form of participation for the Fall of Freedom initiative. JTR Presents is a contemporary art museum that offers design services that helps the creative community, helps the community in general, and we seek to positively impact our community and environment through art, tech, and design. So, in relation to this initiative, Fall of Freedom, it started off with 16 artists that did a call to action about 6 weeks ago. And the call was for anybody in the arts to do something, be it in their programming, a project, something for the 22nd and 21st of November of this year as a way for us as a creative community to push back and call out the current administration and their actions against creative institutions relating to censorship, justice, community, truth, and freedom of expression. This is our community's way of saying that we will not be silenced, we will not be censored, we will still continue to fight for justice for all, we'll still continue to fight for freedom for all, and we stand by our communities, especially those that are marginalized. In addition to that, we exercise our freedom of expression, we exercise our First Amendment rights in really pushing back and holding our government accountable. And so, with that said, we'll be moving on, and I present to you the following artists.
Identifying as a creative rather than an artist, and that's particularly interesting to me, especially with identity. Can you touch a little bit more on that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, for a lot of that art, I was closeted in so many ways and in so many things that even as a child, I had little things. My sister reminds me of all the things I used to draw and where my passions, quote unquote, as a child was, and I just dropped all those. But when I think about it, I go, my partner sort of puts the right title for me on it. Gary puts the right title on it for me. He calls me a Renaissance man. I just approach things and say, oh, that would be nice. Let me try that. Let me do that. So I've painted. I write poetry. I photograph. You know, I do craft. I don't shy away from expressing those parts of myself anymore. So it's a very unique experience for me because I didn't have that for pretty much the first half of my life. I was busy being something for somebody else and everybody else.
So I'd like to expand a little bit more on that because, I think more of what you shared too, it's through multiple facets of your identity, right? As a person of color, I find it interesting you use that rather than Black, and then again, creative rather than an artist. Can you share a little bit more of it? Because I think that touches on a lot of the themes that we're going to be touching today through this.
Yeah. I identify as a person of color because that's what I am. And, I have grown up in the place at the time when they used to call me Negro. I've been called Uncle Tom. I've been called so many different things throughout life. I've been called not a Black Panther, not an activist. I've been called, there's been so many names attached to being Black that for me, I have probably never fit in them, and I never actually wanted to fit in them because that's not who I identify as. I identify as a human being, and as that human being, I am a person of color, just like those who have color in their lives. Um, so I find it's very difficult, me even as a photographer, when people call for Black photography, they're not looking for a Black. They're not looking for a Black person. They're looking for a Black image that builds into the narrative that they're willing to push. And yes, I have family pictures, and all of them are Black. you know, you want that? I can give you that.
Right.
But that's
That's
that's not where I
hilarious.
that's not what I what that when I pick up the camera, that was not what I do. Yes, I have loads of pictures of my family throughout the years and everything else, and I've enjoyed making those images, and they're part of my life, but they're not the images they're looking for.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to start there, right? Because even in my both in my work as a curator and an artist, identity seems it always stuck on me because it feels like so much of the world not only responds to your identity, but also responds to the identity it thinks you are. And I think there's a larger conversation in that. And I think that's what you're touching on. And so, one of my first questions is how does your work, especially in the theme with this theme about community, truth, freedom of expression, justice and injustice, and I would want to include personal liberties, the individual liberty to live your truth and express yourself, tell us who you are in your voice. I'd like to kind of, with that all in consideration, how does your work touch into those themes?
Well,
Or even in your life too?
that's kind of where the dilemma that I'm in presently sometimes in sharing my work with people and with others, because the parameters that people are looking out for are very narrow. And I'm talking about 70 plus years of experience. And it covers, I have a love for flowers, for example. I always say, I don't want to see another spring and take another flower. But, spring comes and there I am. I see it. I go, oh God, let me get my camera. It's part of the expression of who I am as a person. It's not a part, it's has nothing to do with being a person of color. It's just a person. And so therefore I look at some of my stuff and I say, they don't understand. I did one image where I said in a flag, it's not easy being Black in America because you have so much on the definition that within our own culture, and I don't have to include that. We're talking if you're not 400 and all that stuff, and you don't have fraternity links and all this stuff. You have a whole concept of life to deal with, not only within your own community, but in the universe you live in. And being a person who's traveled around the world pretty much my life, every place you go, you as a person of color come in with a whole different story, and you find yourself looking at how you're defined in that culture, whether it's the Dutch or the British or the Asians or anywhere you go, the Spanish, Australia. It's, America has given a dialogue to this color of me, and it follows me no matter where I go. I always talk about the funny experience I had once, my first trip to Europe, and my parents told me to call to let them know I was safe, right? So I get to Paris and I see a phone booth. I go to the phone booth, and like any other person who's been in America, I take a little change out of my pocket. I put it into the machine. The machine doesn't take my coin. Then I figure, oh my God, something's wrong. And I went to the people. I stopped, opened the door, and asked people to help me, and nobody would help me. And finally, I saw this Black woman. Oh, you can't imagine. I was so happy. I ran over to her. She's probably frightened to death that I did. But I run over to her and I'm trying to say to her, can you help me dial the phone? My parents want me to call back and let them know I arrived safely here in Europe. And she started speaking French to me. And it was the first time in my life I heard a foreign language coming out of a Black person. I mean, I knew people who were Jamaican. I knew people from the islands.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never, even the concept that this Black woman could speak French, never even dawned on me. And it was like the biggest lesson I learned in life, you know. And this is part of when we talk about the judgments that we all deal with, you know,
Mm-hmm.
not only do we carry them on ourselves, we carry them with us.
Mm. And I feel like that ripples, not just within yourself as an individual, but also within the communities that you've
If you
cultivated for
transgress
yourself, that you've been invited.
any community that you transgress, there's gonna you're like that rock in the water. You are a
Mm.
ripple, but you don't know. You just don't know what the ripple is you're creating.
So from your experience, like what is community to you? And like how do you build and maintain it?
How do you define community? Well, like all good religious people, I start with my name. I'm Peter. I'm
Okay.
Fisher of Men.
Fair enough.
They name me aptly. I'll tell you, they name me aptly because that's my. I look at all my address books after through my life and so forth, and I can't even tell you thousands of people that I've had in my life and different experiences during my life, and also all. Um, they're all here with me all the time. Now, some are with me physically, some are with me telepathically, some are with me on telephones. But I don't know how I think we have sort of bastardized the word community because we look at it
Mm,
as a place and a time and a space. And
okay.
I feel community is part of that arc that I told you about that I've lived through my life. And these people who've come into my life and made a difference, whether it was for a moment or for a year or 10 years or 15 years. I'm in a relationship for 41 years. So, this arc I have a religious community. I have a friendship community of people who are my friends. I have a Black community. I have an artist community. I have a business community. And they all have a function in my life. And at times, I can actually, when Gary required us to go public with our relationship, and we did it publicly, his
Mhm.
purpose was to get me to acknowledge my whole self. And
Mm,
that was one of the things that all of these communities are my whole self. I don't have a defining on one or the other, whether it's visual aids or whether it's the Leslie Lohman or whether it's a community church or whether it's my neighborhood building here or my neighbors, and my family is the basis on which that community is built, and their friends and their
yeah.
family, and we are the famous family that never gets rid of a sister-in-law.
I never realized that actually.
you know
I've been more
if
distracted,
you've been
like,
in the Robinson Circle, we don't let
yeah.
you go. We do not let you go.
I mean, I also notice we tend to be organizers in our community, it seems. I think you were the first one that's kind of telling me like a lot of our family are business owners and community organizers in some way.
And we're all very
Um,
religious leaders.
yeah. And so that's been kind of fascinating to see that pattern. I also like to think we're the party family because like I just remember all the house parties my parents would set up with everyone they met and worked with. And I see some of that in even in your photography. I see you capturing these moments in time with folks, these sort of special memories or special conversations in a way.
Okay,
um
I'm gonna interrupt you right now because there's something I
yeah.
have to tell you now. It's that I don't know if
Yes.
you know it, but I'm going to give you something that's a part of the arc that is really effective. Okay, I don't know
Yeah.
if you realize. Do you know I have one eye?
Yes.
Okay, you do know the story then, all about that. Well,
Yes.
that also affects how I see myself in life. And
Hmm.
when I lost my eye, I was 11 years old. I wanted to be an airline pilot. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I was told then that once I lost my eye, I had no opportunity at all in front of me. And that kind of
Hmm.
crushed me because I had this dream and now I can't even pursue it. And it's not from my own doing. It was an accident, obviously, but it was like, oh. But one of the things I started noticing, then I was denied driving. You can't drive, Peter, because you only have one eye. You don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have this, you don't have, and that always worked on me. And then the camera came along in my life. The camera was there, but I started realizing that the camera and I had the same view. And that
Mm,
actually the camera gave me, it acknowledged me. We are the same. We see the
mm,
same way. For me, the world is flat sometimes. I have no sense of distance. So when I'm looking through the camera, it also has no sense of distance, basically. So
yeah.
I found that the camera became how I can actually tell the world how I see.
Mm.
And that's because that was the importance of having the camera.
You know, in a way, I feel like this is also a form of resistance in a regard, right? So you're just sharing about because of what happened and of your condition, and then you're being denied these opportunities, or it's almost like someone's trying to define your narrative. And just through the camera lens, through your photography, it sounds like it's a way of you pushing back at that.
It is a
Is that
way.
fair to say, or
It is a way of pushing back. It is a way of showing people how I see. It's a way of also saying that my seeing has value. It's
yeah,
also saying that you know, I'm disabled with a gift,
right.
and
That's
that's
a beautiful choice of words, disabled with a gift.
is I Gary hates this, but I sometimes I have a favorite name for what I want my name. When you have a website, I call it the fictive eye. The fictive eye, FICTIVE, means
Interesting.
seeing and creating.
Okay.
But Gary says, it's such a little word that people will never understand. And I'm saying, I don't care. I think it instantly defines me
Freedom of
and what
expression.
I see. Again, there's
Yeah.
that. Oh, how should you do it? That was one of the things. I have a fictive eye. It creates
Mhm.
and it sees create, and sometimes it creates from the moment, and sometimes it creates from memory or past experiences, and sometimes it creates by itself. You know, it's sometimes I pick up the camera and I know what I want to do, but sometimes the camera says, "Hey, guess what? Here's something
Mhm.
else. Here's something you didn't see."
Yeah. So, what does resistance, are there further examples of resistance in your work as a creative
Yeah,
and in your past work or
I
even
just
your
finished a
current
piece for
works?
visual aids
Okay.
that deals with the censorship in social media,
Okay.
and particularly with male body parts.
Yeah.
Um, that's a big issue here for me. That being gay, it's excuse me, it's what you got. It's not anything else. We created it to be something else, and it's not that. So I
Mm,
actually I don't want to give it away what I did, but
sure.
I can.
Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Oh yeah, I, I'll send you a picture of it so you can see it. I call it
That'll be
the
perfect.
golden nuggets. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
and it goes into a lot of other things that uh, first of all is our representation of ourselves as black. No one asks for our representation as people of color. They ask for our representation as black. And so I have a piece right now in Tom of Finland's Culture Edit on auction.
Hmm,
I call Black Masculinity, and it
interesting.
deals with um, putting some old material, actually, I guess it was sort of medical documents together into an image of holding the black man as his masculinity and what that meant to them. What did it mean to
Hmm,
them to have this masculine black stud, basically,
hmm,
uh,
interesting.
to whether it was from a homophobic point of view, whether it was from a race point of view, whether it was from a property point of view,
Yeah.
it goes all the way. I also
Mm.
want to bring up, the AIDS work, because that was, having lost over 50 friends who died during that period. It's a very part, and I noticed that even in visual aids, it's kind of interesting that the the purpose for it has long since gone past that purpose, which I don't. That's not a criticism of it, but it's the dying of it and the living with it are really a lot of two different variations, and
Hmm.
also how it's gone from the gay community, quote unquote, onto the world community. Uh, that function, I think, is natural, but it's lost somewhat the respect for the purpose of it being. Because if you go to, like, on Facebook, if you go to the AIDS memorial page, it's
Mhm.
still dealing with this issue. People are still talking about their father, their mothers, their child, their friends, their lovers, their partners, their business partners. Uh, they're still real and still dead,
Mm.
and
So
they still affect how we who have lived through it still deal with it. So
yeah, actually, go ahead.
it's just it's I find that, again, here's where I go, the purpose I know, but I feel out of purpose now, because that part of the story is no longer necessary in the development of the organization. It's great that we have the postcards from the edge, but if you notice postcards from the edge, if you walk through that home, you would never know that it had something to do with AIDS, other than a fundraiser, basically. And the gay community
Mm.
does keep their hand in it to make sure that still shows up. But when you look at the overall effect of the art, it it goes past that, and it
Understood.
and it goes past the idea of artists who have AIDS, who were supposed to be. This was their facility to promote their work and to do all that. It's another part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I kind of want to sit in that for a second because there's two things I kind of wanted to bring up. One was a little bit further back when we were talking about with censorship, especially on social media, with certain guidelines. There, yeah, I think, and I speak anecdotally from working with other artists and content creators, even models that have had their stuff censored because it somehow doesn't fit guidelines. And it's a very weird slippery slope there, and I think it is important to kind of just to name that and to like raise awareness of it, and even kind of just acknowledging how that's still a prevalent issue. The second thing I want to like touch on was you brought up something interesting about how in this case it's an initiative with visual aids, and it like as the times change it seems the purpose has changed, and then it almost sounds like you pose it as a question about what are we doing this for, what are we going to, where is this going to go,
Well,
right?
I think it's a natural progression, but the problem is,
Mm-hmm.
what where does the original purpose now reside?
Mm. Yeah, because even as, because I think that I've read somewhere recently that HIV is being no longer considered a death sentence, or no, like it's no longer considered a major threat because of the advancements right now. But that does not mean that we should just go ahead and ignore the fact this is still deadly. And I think trying to translate that to what you're saying, especially with the work with visual aids, let's not forget like there's still lives that are lost here, even as we're moving forward, is kind of what I'm getting out of this.
Another point I just want to make. Sometimes when I read what the programs they're doing, let's say a craft, and I go,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's artistic and everything else, but those people who are sitting at the table, who generally probably have AIDS, they're not
Mm-hmm.
expressing themselves. They're expressing a project for visual aids.
Mm. Now that is kind of interesting. I mean, why? Why?
Yeah, well, yeah, but the original purpose was to allow those people who would who are sick or dying or whatever to have a place in which to express themselves.
Right.
And there's still those people. There's still those
Well,
people.
and you know, I even think
But
about
I
personal.
understand it's grants, it's about money, it's about direction. Look at, I was
Mhm.
a member of an organization years ago called the Hunger Project, and we're
Yeah.
all about ending hunger in the planet. And if you look at this organization as what it started as and what it is now, it has defined that women are the key to the future of feeding this planet. And so a lot of the stuff they do now is directed towards the third world countries and empowerment of women and child growth, which goes
Mm.
past what we used to stand on the street corner saying. but
Mm.
but having to find another having to find another effective means of it happening, even though we talked to every individual who walked down the street and gave them a card and all that, they were not going to end hunger. And hunger is going to end at the core of where it starts, the person who feeds you. So that
Mm.
it's kind of, but that's called organizations. And I can expect that from organizations, but the
Yeah.
idea is you still have this. I mean, I look at my work on visual aids now and I go, I'll never be on their monthly visual board anymore. you know, I
Fair
mean,
enough.
when they bring
Well,
a
not fair,
curator, when
actually.
they bring a curator nowadays, they will not even probably look at my stuff. It doesn't fit a narrative that they're working with anymore.
Mm. Well, at the very least, your truth is still documented with their database, right? And that was the other thing that
And
really
now that
moved me with the organization.
that's about to change too, and they're really
Mm.
seriously looking at how that future will be, and I'm following that argument, that progression with them very much so, because you know
Okay.
I feel they have left the world behind. They left the purpose behind. That
Mm.
database had a purpose. They're
And
not
you know,
they're not they're not selling that database. They're not selling those lives.
mm.
That repository is just that, a repository, when it was supposed to be something that people could go to acknowledge those and see them as themselves.
Mm. And maybe that's a precautionary tale for especially organizations that are currently going through our political times, because I think that's like what we're seeing with the Smithsonian's and our administration is kind of a huge conversation starter, especially when we talk about like with censorship. So in that actually reminds me of the next question, right? So because when I look at that stuff, one of the things, despite me being angry, um, I think about what can I do? Like, what can we do about this? Right. Sure,
Gotcha.
we can protest in the streets, we can donate to your organizations. And of course, when I have money, I'll donate. When I have time, I protest. Now, what else? There has to be something more than that. So,
That's a
I,
question
I
that I've been struggling with for the past 4 years, 8 years, basically.
okay,
And I did make a decision. I have made a decision of how I'm doing that.
okay,
Being basically because of being homebound a lot and all this stuff and not having a lot of mobility,
okay.
I felt for a while that I had no purpose. I had no stake in the game, because I mean I have feelings about it. I have thoughts about it, but I can't get out there and protest. I live on a limited income, so I only have so much to give away. And is it really gonna make a difference and all that? All that goes. But then I sat down. I said, as long as social media is here, I have a voice. And
Right.
I may be talking my audience right now. I have 1,700 friends on Facebook. I have a couple of thousand on Instagram.
Yeah.
I have a place to speak to, and I also
Right.
have an audience that I also know that some of them are not always exactly how I feel. So I have the chance for one to organize and let my friends know what's happening out there. So I make sure I put all that stuff out there, whether I can or not. If you're going to No Kings here and you live in Georgia, here's where you can go. And if you
Mhm.
ask the question, I can give you the answer. Um, but it's been to post always what's going on, what's affecting us, what's in front of us that we generally don't know about. I'm looking for all those kind of my seeking stuff to make sure that we are not blinded by what's going on, that we're all aware of what's going on. I don't know how it's going to all turn out. I have not a clue. I mean, I don't
None of
know.
us do.
But, it's the idea is if we do not know, we're in trouble. If we don't have a
Mm,
sense of it, some people live with it. It's just this. Or it doesn't affect me. Or, I always love that poem, "Who they came for," and then when they came for me, there was no one to speak for me. And I know I don't care what I do right now. I have to make sure that whatever I know is out there, whatever I know what's going on, it's going to go into my media. And people will I don't even put likes anymore on anything I put out there because it's not about me liking anything. It's really about giving you. I have found political cartoons right now the most effective way of dealing with what's going on because they're
hmm.
almost like Aunt Sharon. You know what Aunt Sharon's favorite expression is when you lie to her or you say a lie. She says, "Oh, you just made that up." And you can
Mhm,
look at these political cartoons, and it's sort of the same thing. You're telling me
mhm,
something, but you just drew that. you just you just got to me through an image. You know,
mhm,
and I go, well, that's the purpose of art. That's the purpose of what we do. If you can't communicate, I mean, you can say read newspapers and you can see these long articles that people, Democrats and Republicans, and all put out to read all this and tell you this and that. But you see an image and it speaks to you. You know, it will bring it into your mind and you choose whether you're offended by it or not. You will have a reaction to it. Whether you're on the right, the left doesn't make any difference. So I feel that's part of what I do. And part of what I do is make people aware of what's going on out there. And I share my feelings with them when I can. And I share my work with them when I can. So, for example,
mhm,
when New York, I mean, I was always pleased to be very much involved with the march, gay pride marches in the 70s, during the 80s. And I have lots of
mhm.
images of those times. And I was out there the first time when the alternate march came out to say we don't want the corporations involved in our march anymore. We want to be a separate march. And they brought out all their signs, and it was very democratic in issues for trans issues and for black issues and for all the issues that we deal bisexual and all that. I was pleased to be at that first parade to photograph it because not a parade, excuse me, march. And I mean, it was a march. It was a march. We marched up the street because that's what we did the first parade in New York City in 1970. All we did was gather into the village, and we walked up to Central Park, and we had a party.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had a party.
Pride was a riot.
Yeah.
It was a riot and a
Yeah,
protest.
yeah. And I mean, there's another part of me that felt always guilty about that part. You know where I was when Stonewall occurred? I was on Fire Island, and I remember the night it happened, and I remember the whole island went up in rage. Everybody was talking about it, and people were telling it, yelling, of course, houses and everything, and everybody was going to be on the next ferry back to New York. We all got to go back to New York, and blah blah blah. And this is my first time on the island. I'm looking at a beach, and I'm with my lover, and I'm only going to be here another day.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay
But
here, thank you.
it's so funny you bring that up, right? Because and it makes me think of several artists that have tried that not even tried that are using their craft, their practice, their platform to raise awareness, to educate and communicate with their audience on different issues. I immediately think of Irvin A. Johnson with the In Honor Project, in relation to Black Lives Matter. Shoot, even the transparency exhibit that I curated was to advocate for trans voices. And so what I'm hearing from you, it's like even with your work in photography and to not just document those times, but also document the narratives and continue to participate in projects like with visual aids, that our stories are being told, our truths are being seen, and that we continue to express ourselves, and that it's documented as proof that it existed. And so when I think about your work in that context, and I think about, and I think you touched on it, about how can the arts play a bigger role in our fights for these freedoms and the changes that we seek. And I think you're touching on it, like really documenting, communicating, and educating is kind of the big takeaways I'm getting from that.
Yeah, I had a big experience about just this ballroom that's being built in Washington, and there was a mime about the the money and the gold and all that, and a friend of mine said, "Well, but it's being paid for by private money," and I said, "Well, it's still the optics. The optics, when Marie Antoinette said, 'Let them eat cake,' it wasn't about the money or about the cake. It was about the optics that they couldn't eat and she was, It's like you have to,
Interesting analogy, yeah.
yeah, it's the same story. If you keep the image going out there and you keep the truth going out there and you keep the opportunities going out there, I don't know if we'll survive it, but because look at Italy and France, I mean, and Spain have gone through the process of fascist governments and so forth, but eventually none of them survive, and that's the only good news about where we are.
Fair.
Whatever we have to deal with, whatever we're going to have to deal with, it will have its ultimate end, like all others.
That is refreshing to acknowledge. How even in the thick of it, though, right? And as we're continuing to respond to it, and I think you've touched on this a little bit before about image makers, and it kind of sparked a memory from one of my mentors in college. My mentor, he drilled in our heads all the time about the responsibility of an artist, because we're image makers, and the images we make influences our environment and our community. Everything we made, he would drill us on that. Like, what is your responsibility here? What, like, here's the pros and cons in our critiques that he would bring up, and then he would always tie it to a consequence, what that could lead. And so I think about that. And in this moment in time, and I like to put it back on your work, put it back on you and your work. What are your views of what are your views of the responsibility of the artist, especially in our when we consider like personal and political implications of what we create?
It's interesting that you ask the question you ask, because in effect, I don't have an answer, but I have an answer. And it's in that arc that if we're not being true to ourselves, then what are we doing? If we're not being, I mean, I'll bring up an example that well know about, so this will show you the thing. When I first went on Instagram, I was so glad there was a separate site that I could put stuff that my family would never see. Okay? And now I can keep all my good stuff on Facebook, and all the stuff about me goes on Instagram. Okay? Then Facebook bought Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then Facebook started, and Instagram started saying, here's your new friends, here's suggestions for friends. And next thing I know, all my family's accepting or asking me to follow them. I'm going, no, I can't. You're not supposed to see any of what I'm doing. And so I bring it back to that question, that if you can't be fully expressed, then you can't have an effect. I just realized after a while, I don't worry about what family's coming on, even on Blue Sky for that matter. It's like,
yes,
if they go in there,
fair enough.
I have to own what they see, because I have expressed myself. And this would be me back at my 10-year-old self, trying to hide from the bullies, not going into the gym because I don't want to go into the shower. I don't want to do. I don't exist, and that person doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
You know, and if I don't, as a creative person, if I don't create from what I want or what I desire. I mean, I have images that I sit around. I have dreams that I see images in things I want to do and all that stuff. I don't think I have it the rest of my life to do it anymore. But I have this life to do what I can. And at this point, that's about the best you can do. It's not. It's not about. I don't know what people do. I just had a model in he's in my age, and I was wondering how am I going to. Of course, I want to bring this issue. The other issue is body positivity. And when I started this project, it was to make people have a sense and a view of themselves that they could actually own, that it was them, not the photographer setting you up and making you look pretty. It's you. And I use their being to have them express themselves. And I do it a lot through talking because I speak through the whole session. But it's to bring out the personality and to bring out the person and make them comfortable with who they are. So I can't deny my family this. This is part of what I've just broke this space for myself. And
Right.
this is how I demonstrate how I broke that space. So what's in Instagram is that budding of what happened when I decided to no longer make body an issue. When I decided, I mean, I had the first couple of models, I was really embarrassed because not only am I embarrassed by my body, but don't look at other people's bodies anyway, you know. It's like,
Right.
so now I'm forced to do that, you know, and then I had to think about that. If you're gonna do with this body positivity stuff, you need to change. And so
Mm.
it affects me and it affects the people out there. The last model I had the other day, I said, what do you want from this session? He says, you know, I've seen pictures of myself all my life, but I want to know who I am now.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
that's the opportunity I have to give them and to share with them me now and them now. It's a collaboration. So I find it fills me so much because it's part of the expression that acknowledging who you are. If you, I mean, my painting, I've done maybe 6 paintings basically out of pain. I usually sometimes I feel emotionally and then I have to get it out in words. I can't get it out in images. I can't get it out in any time. I've done lots of things that I feel when I have the need to do it, I have to express it. That's why I call myself the creative, not so much. One of the greatest things I have was for the past 3 years, I've been with the Unitarian Universalists. Every Lent, they have a little project called um, Lent. Yeah, Lent, you know, Lent but in their concept is take words from being a humanist, taking the words, and then what I found out when I first started the project was I could find quotes, and all of a sudden I could see my images. And so therefore I started now
Hmm.
putting those quotes and my images together during Lent because
Mm-hmm.
it's acknowledging that human experience. You know, I mean,
Interesting.
that we are connected through generations, through time, through space, and that if I look back on all the 10,000 slides and so I don't go back that far, but if I ever look back that far, I'd see there's ways and things where I've expressed that human experience in my images the same way those persons put it in words. So, and that's the commonality. And that gives me the sense of not only being different, but being the same.
Mm. Or even different but relatable, right? Like I think about this, I don't even know where I've heard of it anymore, but this idea that we're iterations of the same soul.
Oh, I
It's
believe
giving
that.
it's honoring that.
The old
And
expression that I used to live with is that we're still
mhm,
breathing the breath of Jesus.
we're still breathing the breath of Jesus. Now that's interesting.
Think about it. That nothing has escaped this planet.
Okay. That is actually really profound. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, on that note, talking about this idea of connectedness, at least for me, that is one of the reasons why I personally for this next question, I do feel there is somewhat of an obligation or like it's so weird to say an optional obligation in a way. Um, and this is actually a question that was asked during a panel discussion that me and some fellow artists had with William H. Johnson's work with the Fighters for Freedom exhibit in Greensboro at the moment. So the question was, originally it was, how do we leverage our access to privilege, our access and privilege to advocate for others? But I think it was a more fair question to ask, and a more interesting one too, is are we obligated? And if so, how? And if not, why? And so I extend that question to you because I think that leads in a little bit about what we were just talking about.
I have two experiences in my life that define that question for me.
Mm-hmm.
Once was when I graduated. One of my teachers gave me a book upon graduation. She actually she inspired me a lot. She gave me a photography book called The Family of Man, and it was photographs from a variety of different photographers that showed the condition of mankind at the world at that time. This was in like the 50s and 60s. The second one was, and I can't remember. I'm going to apologize because I don't remember. Is it Mother Jones or no? It's not Mother Jones. There was a black woman who used to just do drawings. I'm trying to think of what her name was. Goes back. And hold on,
Elizabeth,
let me ask
well,
Doc.
Elizabeth Catlett was more, but yeah.
Grandma Moses.
Okay, Grandma Moses.
And they were very simple, um, not classical, not educated, not all that, but just simple images. And she just kept doing these images, and they became these very expensive works of art eventually. But I looked at that and said, if that speaks to people, we all have that ability. I don't think there's an obligation. I think if you put it in the context of a creative person or an artist or photographer, whatever you want to call yourself, if you're not fully expressed, the obligation is not to the community or to the world, it's to yourself. And it's in that because one of the things that I live with from a schooling point of view, that we get engaged with each other through story. I think StoryCorp and all those, they're really fabulous, but the key to communicating with each other is through story. And so if you as a creative person have a story, then the world could benefit from it, but you don't have an obligation for that. That obligation really lies within you to express it.
Start with yourself.
The world will accept whatever you put out there, and they'll criticize it, and they'll do whatever they do to whatever it is. But if you're not expressing who you are, that's your obligation. I've always said, I wish I was a dancer, or I was, I had that young kid where I want to be this when I grow up, and I want to do this, and that lives through all of us at every moment of our lives. It lives through all of us at every moment of our lives. And so the ballerina who goes on stage expressing herself, she's just communicating that which is part of who she is. So there is no obligation. Everything we give is a gift to our existence.
Mm.
And I look at people like Isaac Julian and others who, they're just, here's this new concept of films, using films, museums, and showing the gay community and the black community as a whole, and vibrant, and the Harlem Renaissance and all this. And I go, he wouldn't be Isaac Julian if he wasn't doing that. My painting that you love here, the one I have of what's his name? I can't remember now. You know which one I'm talking about, don't you?
At first, I immediately was thinking of Keith Haring, and
No,
because
not
that
Keith
still
Haring, but
floors me.
the black image with the shirt and all that.
Oh, your self-portrait?
No, not my self-portrait, the portrait that's there. But I'll give it to you later. But
Yeah.
I see his work and I go, God, I am just floored by it. But I couldn't put his name on his name without seeing his work. That's the
Hmm.
obligation of life. So,
Interesting.
and I think of people like Basquiat. I go, how could that crazy person
Mhm.
spend his whole life just dribbling and traveling? He could not stop because that was in him.
Mm.
He didn't give a gift to the world. He gave a gift to himself, and the world accepted it. So when I
Mm.
look at us as creative people, if we're not self-realized, then we're not helping get us through whatever we have to get through. Period. And
I
that
think that's
that is
beautiful.
our community. That's our link to community. You know, there was a thing years ago. There was this thing called Hands Across America.
Hmm. I remember.
if
Yeah.
if every artist in this country ever put their hands together, that's what we are. You know, that's our community. Even though we have
Mm.
no relationship to each other, the fact of self-expression is the community in which we live.
I find that profound because, and I actually don't know if I shared this with you, Uncle. So, one of the reasons I wanted to have a career in the arts was because I think art, and the only thing second to that would be games. I think art has a special ability that no matter who you are and how different you are, that there is an avenue to connect. If y'all are looking at the work side by side, there's something in discussing artwork. There's something about the arts and games, to be fair, that I think gives us avenues and opportunities to connect, regardless of who we are.
It gives us
Um,
access to who we are. It gives us access, no matter who we are. We can look at a red
mhm.
dot, and it still has a different. Every person who looks at a red dot would have a different reaction to what the red dot is. That's
Right. And
because
from that
that's who we are.
yeah, and from that reaction is also an opportunity to connect, like, huh, why are you responding like that? This kind of dawned on me when I was in Art Basel in 2016, Pace Gallery, which is right up
Yes,
in
I know
Chelsea, I
pace.
think.
Yes, I know pace. I know
Yeah,
pace.
yeah. So I think the guy at the time, his name is Peter Boris, and we were looking at Alexander Calder, and we had this long conversation about his work. I was telling him how much I was kind of like surprised about what I researched about him. He's like, be careful not to let too much of the history and the artist narrative inform your relationship with the work. And I was like, that's interesting. Why is that? He's like, because the story that you told, which sounds like philanthropy, it can also be interpreted as exploitation, and that can change how you respond to the work, but the work in itself is its own separate thing. And so then I kind of, it had me rethink about the way that we engage art, the way we perceive and like kind of interact with artwork. And just that whole interaction itself was just kind of an introduction of differing viewpoints, and a lesson that later became relevant as I was learning the concept of death of the artist. So I don't know, that I feel like that
I'm going to
resonates, and
join you
I'm
in
seeing.
this. I'm going to join
Yeah.
in this. Can I share
Okay.
something with you right now?
Yeah,
Can I share the
please.
screen with you?
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh wow, I haven't seen that in a long time.
When you say with the relationship with Calder, here now here's the connection. Here's my obligation.
Okay.
Okay, you talk about Calder. I talk about Calder. Here I have Calder. This is called the communication. I like what the guy told you because I used his inspiration to tell how to go through living with HIV.
Interesting. Okay.
So I have here before infection and infection, you know, going through it, maintenance, and then acceptance. The
Hmm.
process of living with HIV,
Mm-hmm.
using Calder as my, and that's what I was inspired to when I walked down the steps of the museum and I saw the carousel, this image, and I said, "Oh my God!" I fell in love with Calder in a way I had never fallen in love with any artist before, and all of a sudden, when I saw that body, I said, That's the perfect expression for me to tell the story. This is what I have up on visual aids.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. This is so brilliant. Like not just visually that you're connecting with the visual language, but even conceptually, right? Because like just from that experience, in conceptually, I mean with the death of the artist narrative, right?
Yeah.
You like an artwork from an artist, you like the artist, you find out something that's not too great, doesn't put them in a good light, but then you sort of adapt and sort of maintain that, and you got to find your own answer of not just with the art, your relationship with the artist, but the relationship with the artwork itself.
And this is the one I'm doing for, that's this year for, hold on, come on. Why are you doing that? There it is. That's my image for my protest.
Oh, sweet.
Those are avocados and peanuts. In case you've never
I'm
seen them
really,
together before.
I mean, frankly, I'm more interested in in like the textures right now than I really am in what the object is. Like that's so fascinating. What was the influ? We have time.
Influence
What was
was
the
not
influence?
accepting cock on Facebook.
Well, I meant specifically the textures. Sorry,
Oh,
sorry. I just
no,
zoned
no.
way
I
in.
originally I had did this just it was originally done just to mock the idea of not being able to it. When I started looking at the image for visual aids, I started looking at it differently as just a pair of pants, a cock coming out of a pair of pants. It was more
Mhm.
like I need to put more texture behind it. Like the avocados were in a bag, so it was a texture, so I could put that in there. The peanuts have texture, and to have just a solid thing behind it, I needed texture in the image itself to give it a push. So that's the final thing.
Mm, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful. All right, I digress. But so I kind of want to zoom back in on your arc. We started with your arc, and I want to remain connected to that, right? And so, because all of my general questions are kind of done. So, in your arc, what are some in your current work? What are some of the sort of words of wisdom that you're learning for yourself and potentially have to leave for others if you so choose?
Well, let's see. The last couple of projects I did, one was through a poem where the expression was there is no sex behind the veil, and that was to deal with the fact of gender equality and that you know uh, putting that as a part of that discussion of how when I saw that when I heard that as a poem I went wow, you know, just put there's a veil on everything in our lives. Our faces are veils. You know, it's like
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I always thought about it as masks, but yeah, veil would have the same function.
yeah, it's I
Actually,
mean,
the difference
so
is the
when you
veil
look
would
at
hide
when
it.
I look at each one of these experiences, like I said, is being self-realized in the process of becoming Peter Robinson. And until he dies, I will always have that kind of processing, like you were talking about looking at a painting. Uh, who knew that Calder was going to affect me? I mean, I'd seen images of Calder's work before, but when I was in the
Mhm.
museum and walked into it, it was a different experience. I had a different
Mm,
reaction. So,
mhm.
you know, it's funny because Gary goes through a museum on a basis of intellect. As an art historian, he's looking for
Yep,
all that stuff that goes with it. And
that's our time.
yeah, and when I go into the museum, I'll be through it in 10 seconds, and I'll be outside smoking my cigarette. And then Gary will say, "Did you see the painting of it?" I said, "Yes," and I thought that was incredible the way the horse was doing this and that. Did you see the one with the woman with red? I love the flow of the cloth from the belt from her waist down. he said, "You saw that?"
Yeah. I'm starting to pick up your habit. I even turned it into a verb. It's like I'm gonna do a Peter real quick
Yes.
whenever I don't have time. Because it's so funny when you told me about it, because it just dawned on me. Just take the picture on the things that I want to study and then just be present with the work, think what I need to think, do what I need to do, and then be on my way. And I was like, that is beautifully efficient.
Yeah.
But I do, especially if I have people with me, I do like me a good perusing.
The first time it was there's a Bosch work of I can't remember the name of the guy, but it's a triptych and it has all these panels and all what hell looks like and all this stuff. And there was one little character in it. There was one little
Sounds like something of
character.
Earthly Delights.
Yes, and
Mhm.
there was one little character in it. I can't remember what the character was now, but when Gary gave me the test again, he said, "Peter, there's no way you could have really taken in that piece of work."
That is priceless. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said to
Me
him,
and Uncle Gary
"Yes,
are
I liked
astounded
it.
by
The first trip, did you see that little guy and how it transitioned to this image in here and how it transitioned to this on the third triptych?" And he says, "You did it again."
that. Fair enough. Oh man.
So I want to really say that to me, being creative, to sort of give that an arc, the arc is called self-expression. It's being true to oneself. It's being to make sure that whatever you want to say is important enough to say because it's
Mm.
you. And we can talk about the history, we can talk about being famous, we can talk about all that shit. But in reality, when we're put down in the ground, we only have to speak for ourselves. And if our work doesn't do that, no matter how crazy it looks, how weird it looks, whatever it is, it was you we put away. And it's
Mm.
you we experienced. That's all you have to do. And I wish galleries would now look at art. I know this is asking a lot. I'm going to really put it out there now. I wish
That's fair.
galleries would stop looking at works and start looking at people. Galleries have historically evolved to this point, but they should look at um, a large body of work of an individual to use that space to express it. You can still sell art. You can still get people to see it, but
Mhm.
instead of it being, let's say, a group show with one picture of this, and then or it's a solo show that has, oh, okay, you have 20 items and that's the end of it. Why not make your art? Why not give a show that's an arc? I had a friend of mine, EJ Weiss, who was I think I told you the story. He had never had a job. He was an artist. He had been drawing since he was like 3 years old, and he had always earned money off of his art. His whole life,
Mhm.
and one of the things as he got to be older, and when I met him, I'm one of his collectors. Every month he would call you and say, "You should come in and see my new work." Okay.
Mhm.
And of course, everyone who got a call from Jay knew that's a call calling rent is due.
Yeah.
That's all we knew.
Yeah.
And you knew that if you go there, okay, it's going to cost me not 600 or 700 or $1,000, but okay, I'll be down. And we'd sit there, and he'd have all his new work laid out. But at
Mm.
the same time, you had the option of going into the storeroom to see literally everything he's done. So
Mhm.
when you were dealing with him, you were dealing with a whole body of work. You were dealing with a whole individual, and he wouldn't care if he didn't sell any of the pictures he put out for you to show. If you put your $600 into the storeroom and pick something, I mean, it's still $600. You walk out now, you know.
Yeah.
And that's to me, galleries should look at trying to support the artist. They think supporting the artist is having a little show and then the artist doesn't get another show for another 10 years. Well, that doesn't really support anybody.
Um,
You know, if we, if if we looked at, I mean, I appreciate people, artists who actually create their own galleries, like Peter Max and others, because that is truly the way you get to you're truly yourself. You, when you walk into the Peter Max shop, it's a Peter Max shop. You don't walk in there looking for Picasso,
Right.
you know. And people who are so that people are tuned for that, and they're ready for that. So galleries should start. You can have a stable of artists, and they could practically be in the same genre or what, but use that as the game for the gallery. That that's what you're doing. You're bringing this body of work, this body of person, and all the arc of their lives into your life, into your gallery, and so that collectors get to see um, that part of people, because they don't do that. They go to galleries to see works,
Mhm.
and yes, the works are good. You get a lot of press about it, and then people can get crazy and all that. But
Yeah.
if galleries look to dedicate their being to the artist, that could be an interesting concept for life. You know, I mean, a life of a gallery based on just their
Right.
relationships.
Right. I mean, I think it would be redrawing attention of like the my understanding the role of the curator is to care for the collection, care for the artists that contributed to that collection, and then care for the reasons of why are we doing this to preserve those artifacts in the first
Yeah.
place. And it sounds like there needs to be a call for us to kind of come home to that and like really refocus, even in the gallery spaces. I know that's more commercial, but still.
Yeah, well, even
Um,
the gallery spaces are commercial, but I don't think there's a part of anyone's arc that they're not
mhm.
commercial. It's up to the gallery owners to sell it that way.
Mm, interesting.
You know,
Okay.
this is early work. This is an early work of this artist. This is when he's in his
Right.
blue period. This is when he was in his slut period.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
you know, I don't think, and that's the thinking that we don't have. That would support artists. That would support the gallery. The gallery is then looking for collectors who like the work given. Now, you could do two artists per show and then put the theme around it. You know, we're going to do blue today, or blue period, or whatever you want to. We're going to do
Mhm.
injustice or racial justice or whatever it is. But there was something I read recently, and it's really thought we're so busy trying to get back to where we used to be. What's happening
Mhm.
now is saying create something new,
Right.
face the world a different way. We have a lot of artists. The idea of the starving artist should definitely not be an idea anymore
Right.
if we do it the right way. Every community should have a gallery. Every community should be supporting local people. You know, it's
Hmm.
excuse me. We are doing so much online now and everything that there's no reason why we have to limit who we show.
Right. Right.
I mean, the only thing we're
No.
losing is bandwidth, basically. But from a gallery point of view, bandwidth is the least of your cost.
Hmm. That is actually very insightful. Left me a lot to think about, and I really appreciate this. But
Listen, I
ultimately,
love you. You know that. I appreciate you.
likewise.
You know, I'm going to acknowledge that this arc I'm talking about includes
Hmm.
a Boy Scout, an Eagle Scouts uniform. It includes a lot of pins and things. The arc is building. The arc
Hmm.
is building. You're the arc. Welcome to your first quarter.
Thank you. Well, hopefully,
Just so you know, it
I
takes
do
four
you
parts to
proud.
make an arc.
Well, it also so that kind of tells that thank you for that tidbit. That also reminds me how we're connected, right? Like our narratives, we do pass down that torch in some way or another. So thank you. I'm honored. And
Yeah,
Hope I
Listen,
don't
you just
disappoint.
don't have my genes, kid.
That's fair.
When your
Well,
father
thank you.
said you should talk to Jordan, he's just like you. I said, yeah, I know. He's got genes. He's got Robinson genes. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much, Uncle.
Yes,
I
sir.
really appreciate this. And thank you for your words of wisdom.
Make sure when you edit me, make me a little lighter.
Thank you so much for watching. That was such a fun conversation. Before we go, I want to update you on a few things. First of all, JTR Presents just launched an artist resource map. This map is intended to centralize information regarding the resources. That can be equipment, venue spaces, exhibition spaces, residency programs, or other funding for artists to continue their creative practice and for our voices to still be heard and our stories to still be told. Secondly, there are other resources relating to voting. Your representation and your voice does matter, especially in the upcoming elections. You can find more information somewhere around this video. It's probably at the bottom in the description, but please, please, please get out and vote and make sure you're represented. Third, please donate to your local artist organizations or any art organizations that resonate with you. A lot of times us artists and creatives rely on organizations like the National Endowment of the Arts or our regional or art council that often offer funding for our programs or funding for programs for other organizations or offer funding for us artists to continue our work through residencies or just giving us the money directly. So donate to those institutions so they can continue to empower us to do the work that we're doing. And then lastly, I just want to let you know that your life, your voice, and your money matter, and they make a big difference, even if it's something small. Thank you again. Hope to see you soon. Take care.